The Galactic Council chamber glittered with light as hundreds of alien leaders gathered around the giant round table. Their skins, scales, and feathers shimmered in every color of the galaxy. Laughter and mocking whispers filled the air as they spoke about humans. "They're just soft creatures of flesh," sneered a tall, insect-like ambassador. "They still use metals to build their ships." "Metals? They don't even have a seat here," another, a reptilian with golden eyes, chuckled. "They hide on that little blue planet of theirs, pretending to matter." But in the corner, one figure stayed quiet, Admiral Vorik, commander of the Council's fleets. His black uniform clung to his bony frame, and his eyes glowed a dull green. He tapped his long fingers on the table, staring at the hologram of Earth that floated in the center. "What's wrong, Vorik?" The reptilian teased. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Vorik didn't answer right away. He leaned forward, his voice soft but cold. "We know nothing about them," he said. "For a century they've stayed silent. Too silent, yet. Our probes keep vanishing in their space. Our spies never come back. That silence is not weakness, it's something else." The room burst into laughter again. But just then, a technician ran in, out of breath, holding a glowing tablet. "Admirals, we picked up something. You need to see this." The laughter stopped. The technician placed the tablet on the table. A live transmission appeared. A signal coming from Sector X-17, a dead and empty region of space far from any star. The signal was faint at first, just a low hum. Then it grew louder, and then a human voice spoke, calm, quiet, chilling. "You shouldn't have come here." The chamber fell silent. "What is this?" demanded the insect ambassador. "Just human bravado." "Ignore it." But Vorik stood up slowly. "No, this is a warning." By the Council's orders, a fleet of warships was dispatched to Sector X-17. Dozens of battleships, cruisers, and fighters jumped through hyperspace, leaving streaks of light behind them. They arrived at the dark sector within hours. It was quiet. Too quiet. Captain Jira, a young but ambitious officer, stood on the bridge of her cruiser. Her silver armor shone under the dim lights. She stared at the black void ahead, endless rocks and dust floating silently. "All ships, report," she ordered. "All clear," came the reply from another ship. "Nothing here," said another. Yet, the sensors told a different story. "Captain," her navigator said nervously, "our scanners show impossible readings. There's energy coming from that asteroid field, but we see nothing." Jera narrowed her eyes. "Impossible? What do you mean?" The navigator swallowed. "The energy. It's enough to power a sun. Visual confirmation? None. Captain, just black rocks. No lights, no movement." Jera clenched her fist. "We'll see about that. Take us closer." The fleet moved slowly into the asteroid field. The ships weaved between giant rocks, their engines humming. Then something strange happened. The biggest asteroid, a massive chunk of black stone, seemed to shimmer for a second, and then a shadow moved. "Did you see that?" One pilot radioed. "See." "What? Nothing's here." But Jera saw it. A shape, impossibly big, had moved between the rocks. But it was too dark to see clearly. "Stop the fleet," she ordered. "Everyone hold position." But one scout ship didn't stop. It drifted too close to the biggest rock and crashed. The crew screamed as their ship crumpled against something hard. Something not rock. The impact sent sparks flying. And for a moment, under the broken pieces of asteroid dust, they saw it. Metal. A huge metallic surface, hidden under layers of stone and shadows. Lights began to flicker across the surface, faint at first, then brighter and brighter, stretching for kilometers. And then the whole thing began to wake up. Jera gasped. "That's not an asteroid," she whispered. The surface kept lighting up, revealing massive guns, hangar bays, antennae, and engines bigger than entire cities. One of the alien officers screamed, It's a ship." But no, it was more than a ship. It was a supercarrier, and it was alive. A deep hum filled the void as the giant ship's engines roared to life. The human voice returned over the comms, louder now. "Earth acknowledges your challenge." The council fleet froze in place, unsure whether to fight or flee. Then the human ship began releasing swarms of drones, thousands of them, each moving faster than any known fighter craft. One council ship opened fire, but the human drones dodged easily, slicing through its shields like paper. In less than a minute, 3 battleships were gone, nothing but burning wrecks. Jira watched in horror as the supercarrier launched something else, a massive energy beam that tore through a flagship, cutting it clean in half. The voice spoke again. "You have forgotten who we are. You laughed. You underestimated. But we were watching, and we were building." On the council's homeworld, the chamber erupted into chaos as footage of the battle streamed in. The alien leaders watched their mighty fleet get obliterated by one hidden ship. "This can't be real," shouted the reptilian ambassador. Vorik stood silently, his eyes fixed on the screen. "I warned you," he muttered. Back at the battlefield, Jera's ship was among the few still standing. She opened a channel to the supercarrier. "This is Captain Jera," she said shakily. We surrender," the voice replied calmly. "Wise." A massive screen lit up across the void, showing the face of a human commander. He wore a black uniform, and his eyes were cold and steady. "You came here thinking we were weak," he said. "You thought silence meant fear, but silence meant preparation." The surviving ships powered down their weapons, too afraid to resist. One by one, the council ships fled the sector, leaving only wreckage and silence behind. The human supercarrier began to move toward the council's core worlds. Word spread fast, through every planet, every station, every corner of the galaxy. Humans, once dismissed as nothing more than soft creatures, had revealed their hand. Entire species surrendered without a fight, refusing to face the terrifying ship. The council called for an emergency meeting as panic gripped their worlds. Some leaders wanted to flee to the far edges of the galaxy. Others demanded negotiations, but Vorik already knew the outcome. "They've won," he said quietly. A few days later, the supercarrier arrived at the council's capital. It entered orbit silently, casting its huge shadow over the planet. Council leaders gathered on a balcony to watch as the human ship sent down a single shuttle. From it emerged the same commander. Flanked by soldiers in black armor, he walked up the steps slowly, his face calm, his eyes sharp. "We are ready to discuss terms," the reptilian leader said quickly. The human commander didn't smile. "You have no terms," he replied. "You only have choices: surrender or vanish." The alien leaders glanced at each other, then all lowered their heads in defeat. "You've made the right choice," the commander said. As the humans departed, leaving the council in shock, the commander's voice echoed across the chamber. Last time, one ship was enough to show you who we are. Never forget it." The supercarrier rose back into the stars, silent again, leaving behind only fear and silence, the silence before the next storm. The council's fleet drifted deeper into the dark sector. Black asteroids floated all around, like giant tombstones in the void. There were no stars here, just cold emptiness and the faint hum of their own engines. Captain Jera stood at the front of her cruiser, staring into the darkness ahead. She felt uneasy. The signal they had followed here still buzzed faintly on the speakers, a strange human voice repeating itself every hour. "You shouldn't have come here." At first, some thought it was just a recording, an empty threat. But the way it sounded, too clear, too calm. It didn't feel like a message meant to scare them. It felt like a promise. "Status?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Fleet is holding position, Captain. said her communications officer. No contact yet, but sensors, still acting strange. Strange how? The officer hesitated. They keep detecting things that aren't there, energy spikes. Shadows moving, then nothing. Jera didn't like the sound of that. She tapped her console and opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. All ships, stay alert. Weapons hot. Any sighting, report. Immediately. Do not fire unless ordered. Aye, Captain, came the chorus of voices from other ships. One of the smaller frigates, the Kraxen, broke formation to scan a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. Its commander sounded cheerful, trying to make light of the tension. Nothing here but rocks, he laughed over the comms. Maybe the humans left this sector because it's too boring, even for them. His words cut off. Static hissed over the line. Then a scream and silence. Jera's blood ran cold. What happened to the Kraxen? She demanded. Her navigator looked pale. It's gone, Captain. What do you mean gone? Did it crash? Did someone fire? The navigator shook his head. No impact detected. No weapons fired. 1 second it was there, next second nothing. Vanished from all sensors. Jera opened a channel to the fleet. Form tighter formation. Do not stray from the group. Keep scanning. Find out what happened to that ship. The silence of the void pressed down on them as the ships moved closer together. Their engines humming nervously. Hours passed. The signal grew stronger. Every few minutes. The human voice spoke again. You shouldn't have come here. Each time it played, it sounded a little different, colder, closer. The console ships began picking up faint lights deep within the asteroid field. Tiny pinpricks of white and blue, here and there, like stars winking at them. Could be mining drones, one pilot suggested, but then the lights moved fast, darting between the rocks, circling the fleet like sharks. Jera narrowed her eyes. No mining drones move like that. Suddenly another ship, a destroyer, screamed over the comms. They're here. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. The destroyer's hull glowed bright for a moment, and then shattered into pieces, as if crushed by an invisible fist. The rest of the fleet began to panic. Captain, we have to retreat, one officer shouted. No, Jera barked back. We don't even know what we're fighting. Stay together. Hold your ground. Then something extraordinary happened. The largest asteroid, the one everyone thought was just a dead rock, began to change. A crack of light ran down its center, glowing brighter and brighter. And then it split open. Inside was no rocket. A massive metallic structure unfolded itself, like a sleeping beast waking up. Enormous plates of black metal shifted aside, revealing rows of weapons and blinding white lights. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a ship. No, not just a ship. It was bigger than their entire fleet combined. Jera stared in shock. Her voice came out as a whisper. That's impossible. The human voice came again, louder now, echoing from all directions. You were warned. One of the council admirals screamed over the comms. Fire! All ships, fire at will. Lasers, missiles, plasma. The fleet's full power slammed into the massive ship. The dark metal absorbed, every shot like rain falling on stone. The human ship didn't even flinch. Then it moved. A deep hum filled the air as blue energy coursed along its surface. One by one, its weapons lit up. And then, with a single blinding flash, it fired. Half the fleet vanished in a second, torn apart by energy beams too fast to see. The rest of the ships tried to run. But the human ship released swarms of drones, thousands of them, black and silent, moving like smoke. They tore through shields, cut through hulls, and left nothing but debris behind. Jera gripped her chair, her knuckles white. We can't fight this, she whispered. Her communications officer screamed. Incoming transmission. The face of a human commander appeared on the main screen. His expression was calm, his uniform spotless, his eyes cold. You shouldn't have come here, he said. Again, this time directly to her. Jera swallowed. "We didn't know," she said, her voice trembling. "We thought you were hiding because you were weak." The human stared at her for a long moment. "No," he replied. "We were hiding because you weren't ready to see us yet." He nodded slightly, and the screen went dark. The human ship stopped firing. The drones withdrew, returning silently to their hangars. The massive ship began to power down, folding its weapons back into the black hull, disappearing into the shadows of the asteroid field once more. The human voice spoke one last time. "Leave now, or next time, we won't stop." The few remaining council ships limped away, their engines sputtering, their crews in shock. Jera sat quietly in her chair, her eyes fixed on the darkness behind them. No one spoke as they left the sector. The signal faded into silence, but the memory of it, and of the ship they had awakened, stayed with them. The council had thought Earth was quiet because it was weak, but now they knew the truth. Earth was quiet because it was dangerous. And somewhere in the darkness, the humans were still watching, waiting, preparing. The council fleet crawled out of the asteroid field. Limping and broken, Captain Jera stood on the bridge of her cruiser, watching the black void grow smaller behind them as they retreated. Her ship was scarred and smoking, but still alive. Unlike so many others, the human voice still echoed in her mind. "Leave now, or next time we won't stop." Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of her console. She had seen many battles in her life. She had never seen anything like this. The humans had hidden something impossible, inside this dead sector of space. But the worst part was, it wasn't gone. It was still there, and it was still watching. Hours later, the council fleet regrouped outside the sector. They drifted silently, too afraid to speak at first. Finally, a voice broke the silence. Admiral Vorax. His ship had arrived to take command after the disaster. His hollow eyes glowed faint green on the screen. "Report," he said calmly. Jera saluted stiffly. "Admiral, we encountered a human ship." "Yes, we all saw the footage," Vorax replied coldly. "What we didn't see was how. How did one ship destroy our entire fleet?" Jera hesitated. "It wasn't just a ship, Admiral. It was something else. Bigger than anything we've ever built. More powerful. It didn't even move much. It didn't need to." Vorax narrowed his eyes. "Explain," Jera swallowed. "At first we thought it was an asteroid. It hid among the rocks, perfectly camouflaged. But when we got close, it woke up, it unfolded. And then, it destroyed us." One of the other officers, a nervous reptilian, chimed in. "It was like a sleeping giant, waiting for us to find it." Vorax's gaze darkened. "A hidden giant," he murmured. The council called an emergency meeting. The chamber was tense as dozens of alien leaders watched the holograms of the battle. The human ship loomed on the screen, a black silhouette against the stars, dwarfing everything else around it. The footage showed the ship's massive panels unfolding, its weapons lighting up, its drones swarming. It was terrifying. The insect ambassador hissed. How did they build this without anyone knowing?" The reptilian slammed his claw on the table. "It's impossible. A ship that size would take centuries to build, and countless resources. Where were our spies? Where were our scouts?" No one answered. Vorax spoke at last. "They built it in silence. In the shadows, while we laughed at them, they prepared. They used the asteroids to hide it. They designed it to look like the rocks around it, and we never noticed." A bird-like leader tilted her head. "But why build such a thing? Why not show their strength earlier?" Vorax's expression hardened. "Because they wanted this moment, to show us all at once. To frighten us so badly we would never challenge them again." Meanwhile, back in the dark sector, the giant ship slept. Again, its lights faded. Its weapons folded back into its armored body. Its engines went silent, but it did not leave. It stayed there, hidden in the asteroid field like a predator waiting in the dark. Inside the ship, deep in the command chamber, the human commander stood. Before a massive window, watching the Council fleet flee, a young officer approached him cautiously. "Sir," she said, "they're gone. What are your orders?" The commander didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the stars. "We wait," he said simply. On the Council's homeworld, panic spread through the streets. News of the hidden giant, Earth's secret supercarrier, was everywhere. Some citizens demanded war, others begged for peace, but most just trembled. For the first time in history, the Council no longer felt safe. Their fleets were useless. Their weapons were laughable. And somewhere out there, the hidden giant was still watching. A week later, Vorik called another fleet together, this time bigger, stronger. Hundreds of ships assembled outside the sector. Jera stood on the bridge of a new battleship, her stomach heavy with dread. "This is foolish," she whispered to herself. Vorik's voice came over the fleet channel. "Today," he announced, "we show the humans we are not afraid. Today, we destroy their secret weapon." The fleet began to move, engines roaring, weapons charged. As they crossed back into the asteroid field, all eyes scanned the rocks for the hidden ship. But nothing happened. No lights. No signal. No voice. One by one, the fleet advanced deeper into the field. "They must have moved it," one commander said. "Maybe they ran when we regrouped." But Jera knew better. She could feel it. It was still here. Watching. Her sensors beeped softly, faint energy readings. Just like last time. She looked out the window and froze. One of the asteroids ahead wasn't shaped like the others. It was too smooth, too perfect. And then it moved. The massive panels unfolded again. The lights flickered to life, brighter this time, cutting through the darkness. The human supercarrier rose from the rocks like a mountain waking from a long sleep. It didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, the human voice echoed once more, louder, sharper. "We warned you." Vorik barked orders. "All ships, attack. Do not hesitate this time." The Council fleet unleashed everything they had: lasers, missiles, plasma cannons, lighting up the void with fire and light. But the hidden giant's armor absorbed it all, glowing faintly blue under the assault. Then, with one deep thundering, it struck back. Drones poured out of its hangars. Like a black storm. Energy beams sliced through the Council ships. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds. But this time, the human commander spoke again, directly to Vorik. His face appeared on every Council screen. "You still don't understand," he said, his tone calm. Vorik snarled. "You think you can frighten us into submission?" The human tilted his head slightly. "No," he replied, "I already have." One by one, the Council ships powered down, not because they were destroyed, but because their crews refused to fight anymore. Some ships turned and fled. Others simply stopped moving, waiting to be spared. Even Vorik's own officers began stepping back from their controls, their eyes wide with fear. Vorik slammed his fist on the console. "Cowards!" he shouted. "We can still," but his words caught in his throat as the human commander leaned closer to the camera. "Listen carefully," the human said. "We built this ship in silence. We hid it not because we feared you, but because we knew you'd never see it coming." The commander's eyes narrowed, and there are more. The hidden giant began folding its weapons away again. The drones returned to their hangars. The massive ship settled back into the asteroid field, its lights fading until it looked like just another rock. But this time, the humans left one final message, broadcast to every Council world. "There is no corner of the galaxy where we cannot reach you. Remember that." Jera sat quietly on her bridge as the fleet limped away. Once more, her hands shook as she whispered to herself. "They didn't just build a ship," she said. They built fear. And behind them, the hidden giant remained, patient, silent, and ready. Watching. Waiting. The asteroid field lay still once more. Silent. Empty. At least. That's what the Council fleet wanted to believe as it retreated yet again, limping and broken. On the bridge of her ship, Captain Jera sat with her head in her hands. The quiet hum of her ship's engines and the occasional groan of twisted metal were the only sounds around her. She couldn't stop seeing it, that giant shape unfolding from the rocks, its lights blazing like stars, its weapons tearing through their fleet like paper. And worst of all, the human commander's calm words echoing in her mind. There are more. A week passed. The Council was in chaos. On every world, protests and riots broke out. Some citizens demanded revenge, others demanded peace. And many simply hid in fear, waiting for the humans to strike again. In the Council chamber, the leaders argued bitterly. We must attack now, cried the insect ambassador. If we wait, they will destroy us all. Fool, hissed the reptilian. Attack with what? They cut through our best fleet like nothing. Vorik stood silently at the center of the room. His arms were crossed, his glowing green eyes fixed on the floor. At last, he spoke. We are all missing the point, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Vorik raised his head, his voice cold and steady. They showed us only one ship, one. And it defeated everything we threw at it. Yet the human commander told us, there are more. A shiver passed through the room. If that's true, Vorik continued, then Earth has already won. Whether they fire another shot or not. The bird-like ambassador tilted her head nervously. What do you suggest we do then? Vorik's gaze darkened. We find out the truth. If there really are more of these giants, we need to know where, how, and why. So they sent another fleet. Not to fight this time, but to spy. Silent ships, cloaked and stripped of weapons, crept back toward the asteroid field under Vorik's command. Jera, against her will, was ordered to join them. Her ship floated near the edge of the field, its lights dimmed, its engines quiet. This is suicide, she muttered under her breath. Vorik's voice came over the channel. Silence, Captain. We're not here to engage. We're here to watch. For hours, nothing happened. The asteroid field lay dark and cold, the rocks drifting quietly in the void. The fleet's sensors picked up faint energy signatures, but weaker than before. Almost asleep. Then, at the heart of the field, one of the rocks began to shimmer faintly. Jera squinted, leaning closer to the window. There, she whispered. One of the other captains scoffed over the comms. Just reflections. The ship hasn't moved in days. Maybe they abandoned it. But Jera shook her head. No, look closer. The lights. The faint blue lines on the massive black surface were pulsing now, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the quiet was broken. A loud, low hum filled the fleet speakers, so deep it rattled the walls of every ship. Then came the voice. Not a recording this time. Not calm, awake. You never learn. The hidden giant's lights flared to life, blinding white and blue that lit up the entire field. The smooth panels of its surface began to slide apart. Weapons unfolded like sharp claws. And this time, something different happened. The ship began to rise. For the first time, the Council fleet saw its full size, not just a ship, but a fortress, stretching across kilometers of space. Its engines glowed brighter and brighter as it lifted out of the asteroid field, leaving behind trails of molten rock. The fleet scrambled backward. Jera gripped her chair as her sensors screamed with impossible readings. Admiral, she shouted. It's leaving the field. Vorik's cold voice answered. I see it, Captain. They watched as the supercarrier moved into open space. Its hull shimmered faintly, its drones pouring out like black smoke and forming tight, silent formations around it. The ship was no longer hiding. It was awake. and it was coming for them. "Retreat!" cried one of the captains. "We have to run." "No." Vorik cut him off sharply. "Hold position. Observe. Do not engage unless fired upon." But Jera saw what he didn't, or wouldn't admit. The giant wasn't just awake, it was angry. The human commander's face appeared again on every screen. This time he stood, hands clasped behind his back, staring directly at them. "You were warned," he said. His voice was calm but colder now, more final. "This sector is under Earth's protection. Yet you return again and again, hoping to test our patience. You think silence means weakness. You think restraint means fear." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "You're wrong." Without waiting for a reply, the hidden giant fired. Its main cannon lit up the void with blinding light. A council frigate exploded instantly. Then another. The drones descended on the fleet, weaving through ships and cutting them apart piece by piece. Jera's crew screamed as a swarm of drones tore through the ship next to them, leaving nothing but glowing debris. Even Vorik's ship rocked violently as one of the energy beams grazed its hull. Evasive maneuvers. He barked, though his voice now held the first hint of fear. The human commander's voice came over the speakers. "One last time. Earth is awake now. You will not like what comes next." The giant ship didn't stop this time. It continued to move forward, engines roaring like thunder, weapons blazing. One by one, the council ships fled, not because they were ordered to, but because no one dared stay. Even Vorik's own crew began shouting at him. "We can't win this. We have to leave." Jera's ship turned and followed the others, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind them, the hidden giant loomed larger and larger. No longer content to stay in the shadows. It was coming out now, into open space, into the galaxy, no longer asleep. On the council homeworld, panic swept through the streets as reports came in. People looked to the skies as massive. Screens broadcast the images. The human supercarrier rising from the asteroids, its weapons tearing fleets apart, its drones blotting out the stars. And at the center of it all, the human commander, his calm face staring into the cameras. His final words echoed through the air. "We have awakened." The council chamber was quiet when the transmission ended. For once, no one spoke. No one laughed. No one argued. Vorik finally sat down slowly, his hands shaking just slightly. "They wanted us to see this," he said quietly. "They wanted us to know. To fear them." Jera's voice came softly over the comms from her ship. "They built that ship in silence," she said. "And we thought they built it to protect themselves." She paused, staring at the glowing monster now moving through open space, heading toward the heart of the galaxy. "But now, I think they built it to control us." The hidden giant didn't chase the fleeing fleet. It didn't destroy the homeworlds. Not yet. It simply kept moving forward, silent, unstoppable, awake. And everywhere it went, the stars seemed just a little dimmer. The hidden giant no longer slept. It moved slowly but steadily through open space, leaving the asteroid field far behind. The galaxy watched in fear as the human supercarrier marched toward the Council's core worlds. Every planet, every station, every fleet, all eyes were on it now. For weeks, it didn't fire. It simply moved, silent and unstoppable. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time. On her ship, Captain Jera watched the massive black shape on her screens as it drew closer to the Council's borders. Her crew sat quietly at their stations, no one daring to speak too loud. Even the faint hum of the engines felt like shouting in the heavy silence. She turned to her navigator. "How far until it reaches the capital?" "Less than 2 days, Captain," he replied softly. Jera's stomach tightened. 2 days, and then... What? The council chamber was in chaos again. Leaders shouted at each other, their voices sharp and desperate. "They're bluffing." One cried, "It's just a scare tactic." "No," said another, her feathers bristling. "Did you see what it did to our fleets?" That ship could wipe out our worlds in hours. Admiral Vorik stood at the center of the room, his face calm. But his eyes dark. They gave us time to surrender, he said. But we did nothing. We called their silence weakness. Now. He looked up at the massive screen showing the human supercarrier moving closer and closer. We will see what happens when they stop being silent. In the dark of space, the supercarrier stopped. It hung just outside the capital system, its black hull blocking out the stars, its weapons still folded, its drones quiet. Jera's ship floated. Far behind it, her crew holding their breath as they watched. What is it waiting for? Whispered one officer. Jera didn't answer, because she didn't know. Suddenly, the human commander's face appeared on screens across the fleet, and in the council chamber. He stood still, his hands behind his back, his expression calm but cold. His voice carried through every speaker, low and steady. You were warned, he said. The room went silent. The stars outside seemed to dim. You thought silence meant weakness. You thought patience meant fear. You believed that Earth would stay in the shadows forever. His eyes narrowed slightly. You were wrong. The hidden giant began to wake fully now. Its lights blazed to life, flooding the dark with blinding white and blue. Weapons unfolded from its sides. Dozens, hundreds, each glowing with energy. The fuzz. Hangars opened, and swarms of drones poured out like black smoke, taking formation around the ship. And then, the sound. A deep, rising hum, so powerful it shook every ship and every building in orbit. Jera gripped her chair as her screens flashed. Red, they're powering up a main weapon. Her navigator shouted, shields up. Jera barked, but she already knew shields wouldn't matter. The human commander's voice spoke one final time. This is the first strike, he said. And then it began. The supercarrier fired. A blinding beam of energy shot out from its core weapon, cutting through space like a blade of light. It tore straight through a council defense station, slicing it in half as if it were paper. The explosion lit up the system, sending debris spinning into orbit. The ground on the nearest moon cracked and burned as secondary weapons fired next. Smaller but just as deadly, drones swooped in, tearing through the defensive fleet in perfect silence. No screams, no warnings, just destruction. Within minutes, half the council's defenses were gone. Jera's ship shook violently as shockwaves slammed into it. Her crew cried out as lights flickered and panels sparked. She stared at the screen, watching the human ship tear through everything in its path. And yet, it was controlled. It didn't fire on civilian ships. It didn't strike the cities below. Every shot was precise, destroying weapons, shields, ships. They weren't killing without reason. They were making a point. On the council's homeworld, panic swept the streets. People ran through the cities as alarms blared and buildings shook from distant explosions. The council leaders watched the battle unfold on their screens, powerless to stop it. They're dismantling us, whispered the insect ambassador. The reptilian leader growled, his claws trembling. Why don't they just finish it? Vorik's eyes stayed on the human commander's face. They don't have to, he said quietly. We're already finished. After an hour, the human ship stopped firing. The drones returned to their hangars. The lights dimmed slightly, though. The weapons stayed ready. The human commander appeared again. His calm voice cut through the silence. This was the first strike, he said. You have seen what we can do. What we will do, if you force us. His eyes moved from one council leader to another on their screens. You've called us weak. You've called us primitive. You've called us animals. Yet here we stand while you crawl. He leaned closer, his expression darkening. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. We could erase your worlds tonight, but we won't, not yet. He straightened, his voice growing quiet. This is your final warning. The screen went black, the supercarrier folded, its weapons away, its lights dimming as it drifted back slightly from the capital planet. But it didn't leave. It stayed there, silent, Waiting on her ship, Jera finally allowed herself to breathe. Her crew sat in stunned silence, staring at the screens. "They could have destroyed us," whispered one officer. "They still can," another replied. Jera stood slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They won't need to," she said. "Not if we destroy ourselves first." In the council chamber, no one spoke for a long time. Vorik finally turned to the others. "You've seen enough," he said. "They have shown us the future. We can choose to be part of it, or we can vanish from it." His eyes glinted coldly. "But the choice is no longer ours alone." And above them all, in the quiet of space, the hidden giant hovered like a shadow, cast across the stars. The first strike was over, but everyone knew it was only the beginning. The giant ship hung in orbit like a silent predator. Below it, the Council's capital world burned in small contained patches where defense stations had been destroyed. Drones still drifted quietly in formation around the human supercarrier, their black shapes blotting out stars. But they didn't fire, not anymore. They simply watched. On her ship, Captain Jera stood rigidly at the window, staring up at the massive black hole that covered half the sky dot. It hadn't moved in hours, yet she could feel its presence. Heavy, alive, patient. Her communicator buzzed. "Captain Jera," came Admiral Vorik's voice. "You're ordered to report to the capital immediately. Bring your crew." She stiffened. "Why, Admiral? What's happening?" His voice was flat. "The human commander has requested to speak with you." The council chamber was quieter than it had ever been. The usual shouting, arguing, and posturing were gone. Instead, rows of alien leaders sat stiffly in their seats, their eyes locked on the figure standing in the center of the room, the human commander. He was tall and calm, dressed in black, his uniform crisp and spotless. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable, and he stood there alone. No guards, no weapons, just himself. Jera entered the chamber slowly, feeling every pair of eyes on her. The human turned his head slightly and met her gaze. A moment, she froze. There was no anger in his eyes, no fear, just quiet, like a storm that had already decided where it would strike. Vorik stepped forward stiffly. "You asked to speak," he said. The human nodded once. "I did." Vorik gestured to the chamber around him. "We are listening." The human's gaze swept the room. "You think," he began softly, "that this ends with my ship. You think if you destroy it, if you destroy me, Earth will bow to you again." He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand yet." One of the bird-like ambassadors hissed nervously. "Then explain it to us. Why are you doing this? Why now?" The human tilted his head slightly. "For centuries," he said, "you called us primitive. You stripped our colonies. You stole our people. You laughed at us, and we said nothing. We stayed quiet." His voice hardened just a little, "because we were building." The room was utterly still. The insect ambassador whispered, "Building? What?" The human's eyes darkened. "Ourselves." He took a slow step forward, and even though he carried no weapon, every council member leaned back slightly. "You looked at our silence," he continued, "and thought it was weakness. But it wasn't." He raised his hand slightly, and a small projection flickered to life above his palm. A glowing map of the galaxy. Tiny blue lights blinked across dozens of star systems, hundreds. "Everywhere you thought we were absent," he said, his voice low and steady. "We were already there." The room gasped. "You never saw us because we didn't want to be seen." He closed his fist, and the map vanished. "And now," he finished, "we are done hiding." Vorik spoke, his voice tight. "What do you want from us?" The human regarded him quietly for a long moment. Finally he replied, "Respect, nothing more, nothing less. Leave Earth and her people alone. Do not cross into our territories. Do not send your fleets to test us again. And if we refuse?" The reptilian leader spat, though his voice trembled. The human's gaze locked onto him. "If you refuse," he said simply, "you won't get a second chance." At that, the human commander turned and began walking toward the exit. But Jera couldn't stop herself. "Wait," she called. He paused, glancing back at her. She swallowed and took a shaky breath. "Why me? Why did you ask to see me?" For the first time, a faint shadow of a smile crossed his face. "Because," he said softly, "you saw the truth before the others did. Even when they mocked you, even when they ignored you." He gave her a small nod. "You knew we were awake." And then he was gone, outside. The supercarrier began to move. Its drones swirled back into their hangars, its weapons folding away. Engines roared to life, glowing blue against the black. Slowly, it turned and drifted back into the stars, leaving the council capital behind. Not defeated, not afraid, just finished. For now, in the chamber, the council leaders sat frozen, staring at the empty doorway where the human had stood. Vorik finally broke the silence. "Well," he said quietly, "I suppose we've been given our answer." On her ship, Jera returned to her bridge and stood at the window, watching as the black shape of the hidden giant grew smaller and smaller. One of her crew whispered beside her, "Do you think they'll come back?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the stars where the ship had disappeared. "They never left," she said at last. "They're just waiting." And somewhere in the dark, far from the council's eyes, the human commander stood again at the window of his giant ship, staring back at the galaxy. His hands were clasped behind his back. His voice, though quiet, carried through the bridge. This was only the beginning. The human supercarrier disappeared into the stars, yet its shadow remained. Every planet, every moon, every station, all felt its presence even after it was gone. The galaxy trembled. On her ship, Captain Jera stood at her window, staring into the black dot. It had been days since the human commander left the council chamber. Days since he delivered his warning. But no one, not even her, could sleep. Because somewhere out there, beyond the light of their suns, the hidden giants waited. In the council chamber, chaos returned. The leaders argued, accused, cowards. The reptilian roared, slamming his claw on the table. "We cannot just sit here and let them frighten us into submission." The bird-like ambassador shook her head, feathers trembling. "You saw what they can do. They crushed our fleets without even trying. You want to fight that?" "They will come again," hissed the insect ambassador. "You heard him. This is only the beginning." At the center of the room, Vorik stood still, watching them tear each other apart. Then he spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. "They already won," he said flatly. Everyone turned. "They won the moment they showed us that ship," he continued. "We can build fleets, we can shout and threaten, but it won't matter. They've already decided the outcome." He looked up at the ceiling, where a giant screen still showed the supercarrier's last broadcast. The black hull glowing faintly blue, silent and awake. "And now," Vorik added, "the galaxy is theirs." Far from the capital, in the outer sectors, the humans began to move. Silent black ships, smaller than the supercarrier but no less deadly, appeared over colonies and stations. They didn't fire. They didn't speak. They just watched. On one mining world, a human commander descended in a shuttle to the surface. The local governor, pale and trembling, met him at the landing pad. The human's voice was quiet, calm, like always. "This is Earth's territory now," he said. The governor swallowed hard. "And if we resist?" The human raised one eyebrow slightly. "You won't," he replied. And he was right. On her ship, Jera's crew watched reports come in from across the galaxy. Planet after planet surrendered without a fight. Stations deactivated their weapons. Fleets stood down everywhere the humans appeared. The stars seemed to dim just a little. "They're everywhere," whispered her navigator. Jera didn't answer, because she knew one night, or what passed for night in space. Jera received a private message, encrypted, untraceable. She opened it and froze. It was the human commander. His face appeared on her screen, lit softly in the dark of his bridge. "Captain Jera," he said, nodding slightly. "You understand now, don't you?" She swallowed. "Yes, I think I do. You were the first," he continued. "The first to see what we really are. That is why I wanted you to see the end." She looked down. "Is this the end?" The human tilted his head. "No," he said. "This is the beginning." On the bridge of his ship, the hidden giant, the human commander stood before the massive window, watching the galaxy glitter before him. The stars sparkled faintly, unaware they were already claimed. Behind him, his officers worked silently. At their stations, their uniforms black and sharp, one of them finally spoke. "All sectors report complete compliance, Commander. No resistance." The commander nodded. "Double quotes good," he said softly. The officer hesitated. "And if they do resist?" The commander's eyes stayed fixed on the stars. "They won't," he said, but his voice carried a quiet edge. "And if they do, we remind them why the galaxy trembles." In the council chamber, Vorik stood at the great window, looking out over the capital city. Smoke still rose from the distant defense stations. Above them all, the faint shadow of a human ship hovered. Silent, unmoving, a constant reminder. Behind him, the leaders whispered, afraid to speak too loud. One of them finally asked, "What do we do now?" Vorik closed his eyes. "We do nothing," he said. He opened his eyes and stared at the stars. "Because now," he added, "the galaxy belongs to them." On her ship, Jera watched as more black ships appeared on her scanners, slipping in and out of space like ghosts. Everywhere she looked, she saw their faint blue lights. She turned to her crew and spoke quietly. "Remember this," she said. "Humans were quiet for a long time, and we thought it meant they were weak. But it didn't." Her eyes narrowed as she watched the largest ship, the hidden giant, slide silently past her window. They were waiting. She whispered, "And now the galaxy trembles." In the quiet of space, the human supercarrier continued its silent journey, cutting through the void like a black knife. No one dared stop it. No one dared follow. On its bridge, the commander stood alone at the window, his hands behind his back, his reflection faint in the glass. His voice, low and steady, broke the silence. "This was never about war," he said. "This was about reminding them who we are." He turned, his boots clicking softly on the metal floor. "Let them fear," he said to no one in particular. "Let them whisper our name." He glanced back at the stars, his eyes sharp and calm. "Because now," he finished, "the galaxy belongs to Earth." And so the hidden giant drifted onward, silent, patient, unstoppable, and everywhere it passed, the stars seemed to shiver just a little, because the galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans were awake. Now and the galaxy trembled. The galaxy would remember this day forever. One ship, one victory. The human supercarrier hung motionless over the council capital, its vast black hull glowing faintly with blue veins of light. It had been there for days, quiet and unchallenged. Not because the council had no fleets left, but because no one dared to move against it anymore. It had already won. On her ship, Captain Jera stood on the bridge. Her arms crossed as she stared at the giant ship above. The faint hum of her engines and the low whispers of her crew were the only sounds around her. Navigator spoke in a nervous voice. "Captain, new transmission from the humans. They're asking for you." Jera's stomach tightened, but she nodded. "Put it through," she said. The human commander's face appeared on her screen, calm and steady as ever. "Captain Jera," he greeted. She swallowed. "Commander." He studied her for a moment, then spoke. "It ends today," he said. Jera blinked. "What ends?" "The lesson," the human replied. You've seen enough. You've learned enough. And now? He glanced briefly to the side. Then back at her. Now we leave. Across the galaxy, screens came alive with the human commander's broadcast. His calm voice carried to every station, every planet, every ship. To the council, he began, and to all who watch, remember what you have seen here. Behind him, the shadow of the giant ship loomed larger than ever, its lights flaring brighter now. We built this ship in silence. We hid it not because we feared you, but because we knew you'd never see it coming. He raised his chin. Slightly. You underestimated us. Again and again. You laughed at us, you took from us. But all the while we were building. The camera pulled back slightly, revealing the ship in full. One ship, he said. One victory. On the ground below, the council leaders watched in silence. Vorik stood at the great window of the chamber, arms crossed, behind him. The others whispered nervously. Vorik didn't look back at them. They don't need fleets, he muttered to himself. They don't need armies. He shook his head faintly. They only need us to believe. Jera's ship floated alongside the council's battered fleet as the human supercarrier began to move. Its engines roared to life, sending waves of light rippling across the stars. The drones returned to their hangars, weapons folded away. And then, slowly, silently, the hidden giant began to rise, leaving the capital behind. Her crew watched in awe as it drifted upward, growing smaller with every second. One officer finally spoke. They're leaving? Jera nodded, her voice quiet. They don't have to stay, she said. They already won. On the bridge of his ship, the human commander stood at the massive window, his hands clasped behind his back. One of his officers approached him cautiously. Commander, the officer asked, why not finish them? We could destroy them all. Right now. The human commander didn't turn around. His eyes stayed on the fading lights of the council world below. That was never the goal, he said softly. The officer frowned. Then, what was the goal? The human finally glanced over his shoulder. To make them remember, he said. In the council chamber, the leaders gathered at the window as the supercarrier faded into the stars. Vorik stood silently in the center of the room. One of the bird-like ambassadors spoke at last. What happens now? She asked. Vorik turned to face them, his eyes cold. Now, he said, we never forget what one ship can do. On her own ship, Jera watched the stars where the humans had disappeared. Her navigator whispered behind her. Do you think they'll come back? Jera didn't look away. They never left, she replied. They're out there, always. Far from the council worlds, deep in the quiet black of space, the hidden giant floated once more among the asteroids. Silent, patient. Its lights faded to faint blue embers as it settled back into its place. Folding its weapons away. Waiting. On the bridge, the human commander stood alone, looking out at the galaxy. His reflection in the glass showed a faint smile. He spoke softly, as though to the stars themselves. One ship, he murmured. One victory. He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the silent bridge. And if they forget, he added, almost to himself, we'll remind them. And so the hidden giant slept again, but the galaxy never would. Every station, every planet, every ship would look to the stars and remember. It only took one ship to bring them all to their knees. And somewhere out there in the dark, it was still watching.